In this lesson, we're going to be graphing absolute value functions. Now you'll notice this first problem is not in your notes. For the first problem, I want you just to listen to what I'm doing and not actually follow along with your notes. So this is what an absolute value function looks like right here. You'll notice we have the absolute value symbols in here. So we're going to graph this, and we're going to use our calculator to help us learn how to graph these by hand a little easier. So I want us to do all of these on our graphing calculator. To put the first one on, I would punch in on my calculator. So here's my screen. I go to y equals. You'll see I highlight in red, so follow along with your calculator, please. And then I'm going to put in the absolute value of x. So to get the absolute value symbol on my calculator, I go to Math, I arrow to the right to Number, and ABS is my absolute value. So I hit Enter on number 1, and that's going to put the symbol in for me. So now to put in my value, we're doing the absolute value of x. So I'm going to enter x, and then I would close that parenthesis. From here, then, to see the graph, I just hit Graph, and you can see that picture right there. That's an absolute value equation. The graph makes a V, and we'll talk more about that later also. But for now, we're just going to plot the points to make this graph, and we're going to sketch these graphs and learn more about them in a little bit. So to sketch this graph, I could sketch it just like this and put my dot at 0 and kind of make the line go up, but I want to be a little more accurate. So we're going to look at our table of values. So you would push Second Table, and you'll see my table might start differently than yours. You can go up and down. I'm going to start mine so it says 0 on the top. Notice 0, 0 is my first one, and I need to be able to go back and forth. So I'm going to graph 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3. So on my sheet, you're not doing this because you don't have this. I would graph 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3. If you notice, that's just going to make half of my V that I need to graph this equation. So I'm going to look back on my calculator and see what values I have after the 0. So negative 1, negative 2, and I probably could have guessed it would be negative 1, 1, negative 2, 2, negative 3, 3. So again, I'm going to go into my graph, negative 1, 1, negative 2, 2, negative 3, 3, negative 4, 4. And there's a sketch of an absolute value function. What I want you to do right now, ignore the top part of your notes that say A moves the graph, B moves the graph. We're going to learn what happens with that after you graph your own on the calculator. So I want you to do A through F on your calculator, and then sketch those onto your note sheet, and then we'll talk about them. I want you to notice that B, C, D, E, and F are inequalities, so you will have to shade those also. So do the best you can, pause the video, and then I'll start teaching as soon as you get done. So, number 2, when you put that on your calculator, hopefully you saw that it's the same as the one we did first, except that the absolute value is going down instead of up. So the exact same points, it's like a mirror image. So you should have gotten this. If you didn't get this, one of the common mistakes is that students don't put the negative sign outside the absolute value. So your calculator should have looked like this and not having the negative inside. Sometimes people do that. So once I graph this, the only thing I'm going to notice is, okay, I put a negative sign in front of that absolute value and it went down instead of up. That's something I'd want to note. B, that is the one that we actually graphed, the same one except it's an inequality. So I'm going to have the same points. And it says greater than or equal to, so it would be a solid line. And then I'm supposed to shade where y is going greater than. So we will shade the inside of this absolute value. And it'll always be either the inside or the outside. C, hopefully when you graph C on your calculator, you notice that it's looked the same as our other one, except it went from 0, 0 to 0, 2. It moved up 2 spots. And then the shape appears to be the same after that. It's a greater than symbol, so I do dashes. And it's, again, where y is going greater than, so I'd shade the inside of this absolute value. And hopefully you got all that. So what I want to notice here is that this plus 2 on the outside of the absolute value made it shift up 2 from 0, 0. That's what I want you to notice. As we go to D, D went down, and it went down 1. From 0, 0. So it's going down. You hopefully got this off your calculator. It's less than or equal to, so it's solid lines. And since its y is less than or equal to, I would shade inside my absolute value again, but it's going down. So I shade all over in there. What I want you to notice about D is This negative 1 on the outside made it shift down 1. Remember the plus 2 made it shift up 2. So this one made it shift down 1. And this negative made it go down instead of up. So you should be noticing some patterns of how these inequalities change and what happens to your graph based on that. Letter E, you will see that you're starting your graph at 1, 3. That's where that graph started, and then it went up. It is less than or equal to, so solid line. This is our first one that's not on the inside of the absolute value. Since it's where y is going less than, it's all outside it. So everything in here would be shaded. What I want you to notice is this plus 3 on the outside of the absolute value, again, shifted it up 3. But this minus 1, a lot of times if we had to guess, we would have guessed it would shift it left 1, but it actually shifted it right 1. So the opposite of what we would have thought. And then that's where my vertex for my absolute value equation went. And the last one is F. Hopefully with F you can look at the inequality and say, okay, this negative tells me it's going down. I think this plus 1 is going to make it shift left 1. And I think this negative 2 is going to make it shift down 2. And that is what happened when you graphed it. So it shifted left 1 and down 2, and it went down. It's greater than, so it's a dashed line, and it goes where y is going greater than, so you should have shaded everything on the outside again. So now that we've done that, and you see how they move, hopefully you can answer these top questions in your notes. So A, the A value is right here. And because the equation, the skeleton equation for an absolute value function is listed right here, because there's a minus sign there, it's just like point slope form. It's the opposite of what you'd think in there. So A moves the graph either right, and I'm going to put a negative sign in there because if it's negative in there, it moves it right, or left. And I'll put a positive sign in there because if it's a positive in that absolute value, it moves it to the left. B then, right here, hopefully you see that that moves it up or down. So if it was positive, it went up, just like you'd expect. If it was negative, it went down. And then it says a negative in front of the absolute value sign, we'll say flips the graph over the x-axis. And hopefully now you won't have to, you can still graph them on your calculator, but hopefully you can look at them really quick and just plot the points without looking at your calculator.